Here we go for another edition of AWS DeepRacer Underground. I'm your host, John Meyer. With me, I have Blaine Sundred. Blaine?
Hi, Blaine Sundred, host of DeepRacer TV. Glad to be here. We're going to have some fun today.
Yes, we are. And track boss himself, Mr. David Smith. David?
Good afternoon. I'm excited to be here for the first race of the season. I think it's good to see the track. Good to see your pit crew are ready and standing by. And let's get ready to race.
Yes, speaking of my pit crew, let me introduce them. I have my daughter, Haley, and my son, Jordan. Step out into the light. There we go. Awesome. I can't do this without them or my commentators. This makes Underground DeepRacer here a thing. Go ahead and get yourself settled and situated. We're going to get started. So where are we at? Here we're in the PA Prime Loop, and we're running VMware and Pluralsight event. What happened? Well, we took the top 5 racers from the community race, and we're going to race them live here on a physical track in my basement. Yes, this is DeepRacer Underground. Blaine, who's our racing order for today?
So we got a racing order starting out with Team Mercury, followed by Mad.
So,
did I get it backwards?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, so Team Mercury is going to be our first team out on the track, followed by MadRaxer, then Team EDARacers. DiedPool comes in next to last, and VRacer is going to be our final competitor because VRacer scored the fastest time in qualifiers.
Nice. Awesome there. David, how are we looking on the stream there? And encourage people to chat. We're going to drop a bunch of links and some cool stuff there within the chat. Please jump in there. Let us know how we're doing. What do you think of the event?
Hey, John, speaking of cool things, did you know that the first prize coming out of this particular race is going to win a lunch with Vice President Chris Wolf? Folks, these racers have something they're really trying for.
Yes, a lunch. Sit down with Chris Wolf. Now, we couldn't get Chris for an introduction here, but don't worry about it. We do have the date and time or approximate when you're going to sit down with Chris Wolf there and have your lunch. So that's a huge thing you're working for. Now, what you see on the screen is you see the leaderboard. The leaderboard's going to see where you're at positioning. We're going to race it in reverse order. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 there. Below the leaderboard, you're going to see a timer. This is live. Literally, we are hitting the time and the lap on there. You're going to see how well you're doing. And we'll let you know what the lap speed is and how much time you have left. I think it's time for racer number 5.
So racer number 5's coming out of the gate. This is Team Mercury, which is a collection of people from Palo Alto and Sofia, Bulgaria. Malini Bandaru, Pramod Pjayathirth, and Yalin Yovchek are going to be making up the development here. We've got the car on the track getting ready to go. As we talk about DeepRacer, it's important to understand that while the developers for Team Mercury have written the code that helped program the machine learning model that's in DeepRacer, they will not be the ones steering the car. This is truly an autonomous vehicle that will be steering itself once ready to begin.
Yep, we're ready to keep going here. Pit crew ready? All right, and I did double check to make sure the car is turned on this time, as it's usually a caveat there. And let's get started. You have, oh, you know what we forgot to say? Rules, event rules. You have 3 minutes on the track. First minute, that's going to happen is I'm just going to try to get you a nice speed and complete a solid lap. In the next minute, I'm going to slowly increase the speed. Now, remember what Blaine said. We do not control the car for steering, but I can control the speed, and I try to increase it a little bit, see how well you're doing. In the last minute, I might increase it and try to get you the fastest time here to win that prize. Take note, this is a 2018 reInvent narrow track with a slight modification here in the turn because I got an office in my way. But don't worry about it. I am very competitive. Blaine, we ready to race?
We are ready to race. This is the first race of the 2021 season here at Underground DeepRacer. Glad everyone's here. We are ready to go. We're counting down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are under green, and the car is getting ready to leave the starting line.
And it decided it's not moving. I swear I turned it on. Okay, we're going to pause there a second.
We're going to pause. We're going to pause for a moment. And while we pause, while we're pausing and checking that out, David, talk to us a little bit about how developers work on building these reinforcement models.
Yeah, sure. So it's all based within the console, although you can join the DeepRacer community. They do have a way of training outside of the console if you have the hardware capability. But within the console, you are writing code in Python. There is a validation tool within the console there to make sure your code is valid. And there are about 20 different parameters you can use to reward your car or reward your model. So essentially, you can give it a reward value that's higher if it stays on the center line, or on a left turning track such as this one, you can reward it for a higher value for staying left of the center line. And there's parameters such as all four wheels on track. You can look at the steering angles and that sort of thing. And there's also within the world that really exists on the simulator, there are waypoints. So you can look at the waypoint you're at now, the path to the next waypoint, and you can use that to reward your function as well. So you can go quite simple. I've written some reward functions that are 6 or 7 lines of code that will do 20, 30 seconds a lap on the 2018 track. Or you can write far more complex code and potentially still get the same sort of time anyway. It's always interesting when you do these events, when you get some developers against AI and ML experts, and the developers sometimes come up on top because they don't overthink the solution.
It's a fascinating thing when you talk about the AI, ML, the artificial intelligence, the machine learning that goes into the model, because the car itself is a fairly simple vehicle. It has wheels that can turn left or right, and it has an accelerator. It simply goes, forward at a certain speed, or it can slow down if it wants to. So all these parameters that you're talking about are really different ways for it to understand that because it turned left, that was a good thing or not a good thing. So it has a camera that can see that the road in front of it's turning. It's why, especially here in the DeepRacer Underground, there's such a clear delineation between the green off track and the black on track. Although the truth is, the camera turns into black and white, doesn't it?
Yep, it's a grayscale camera. Yeah. So it's and that's to do with the performance of the computer on board. If you're looking at colors, it'll be a far more complicated model, and they're just in the processing power on board the car to do it. In fact, most image recognition stuff is done with grayscale anyway.
So it's designed again for real-time, high-speed evaluation, and the model that's trained over hours, sometimes days, is all about that. Depending on what the camera sees, the model needs to make a decision. Am I turning left? Am I turning right? Am I staying straight? So this particular track is interesting because it's mostly left-hand turns, except for the one dog leg that turns right. Models that are overfitted won't be able to handle that right turn necessarily as easily as other models. Talk to me about what overfitting is. That's often something that people who are not AI experts may not understand.
Okay, so in terms of the overfitting, it's you're training very specific for, in this case, a track, but the example we use for our workshop is if you're training a dog. So you're training your dog to sit down, you give it a reward. After a period of time, your dog knows that if it sits, it gets a reward, it knows the command and that sort of thing. The problem stems from that is if you always train your dog in the same place. So if you're always training your dog in the kitchen, and then you go to show your friend, I think it's in the living room or a different part of the house, to go, look, my dog can now do a sit, and it can now sit. You go to your dog, sit, and it runs off to the kitchen and sits in there. So it doesn't sit where you are, but it thinks the only place it should be sitting is in the kitchen. So you've overtrained your dog for that very specific example. It thinks it should sit in the kitchen. And you can do the same with things with the cars. You can basically overfit them. So they can, in this case, it would potentially only turn left. I have seen this, especially on the 2018 track, with some of the earlier models, where people's models would get to that first right-hand turn, or the only right-hand turn, and wouldn't know what to do. It just kind of go off to the left still, or it just follow the track and just crash off to the side. So it's quite interesting from that point of view, and it's an interesting way of seeing how good people's models are. Because although it's a relatively simple track in terms of self-driving car, it's a pretty complex problem.
That idea of also translating from a virtual reality to the physical. One of the things that it took me a while to really understand is that all of the training is done virtually. That once you take the model and put it into a physical car, it doesn't continue to learn. That at that point, you've got a static model in this DeepRacer environment. And so the only way it knows how to turn left or right is based on what it learned in the virtual world. But in the physical world, there's things that it may not see. For example, in the case of Underground DeepRacer, the track is not the exact same dimensions as the virtual track. There's not as long of a path in the dog leg. And there's also a giant pole in the middle of the track. Now, in theory, that shouldn't make any difference to the car because the car should just be looking at the track. But are there things that a developer could do that can help them be better successful at this translation from a simulation to a real world environment? Oh, we're getting close to testing this. Let's hold off on that question. We'll come back to sim to real in a bit.
Back to it later.
Let's test to see if we've got good running vehicles. We got forward motion. John, how we doing?
Okay. So before this event, we tested out my #1 car. We just make sure that everything works. We had no problems going around it. Wouldn't you know? I swear it's like commentators curse. As soon as you go live, something goes wrong. But don't worry, I always have a backup car, spare car ready to go. I have that loaded up. I tested it out, made sure the calibration, everything's good. We are actually finally officially ready to race our first race. So I apologize for the delay. And Blaine, whenever you're ready, you can give us the countdown. I want to verify pit crew. Okay.
Pit crew's happy. Team Mercury is on the track. Here we go. We are once again getting ready, going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we are under green, and the car is off, and we have begun the 2021 season. Team Mercury is having a nice, careful loop around the track, staying on track. Again, as long as you have at least one wheel inside the track, you are still considered on, and the first lap is good with a time of 16.343, significantly better than the qualifying time. The qualifying time was set at 37 seconds. So this track races considerably faster than the qualifying times. We are getting some good times. Lap number 2 coming in at 15.4 seconds. So an improvement of almost a full second off of their first lap time. Developers have 3 minutes to score their best single lap as long as that lap has no faults. Now, our pit crew expert, who is pacing behind the car, is making sure that the car stays on the track. If the car goes off, she will replace the car at the point where the car went off track. So they don't get any free advances. They do have to finish all the turns in the car. But we have found historically that cars that have a fault in the lap, because this track is so easy to race, often any fault at all will mean that won't be a lap good enough to win the competition. Dave, talk to me about the different type of tracks and how those laps might work in other environments.
Well, the interesting thing with this track, I mean, this is the original 2018 track, and obviously it's about 8 meters by 5 meters, the full size. It's slightly narrower on here to fit in John's basement. And then throughout the season, we launched a track each month in the virtual world. And then for reInvent 2019, we launched the new track, which was wider in terms of the black tarmac for the Evo cars. So there were 2 cars on the track at the same time for head-to-head racing and object avoidance. But it was also double the area. It was 10 meters by 8 meters. And the interesting thing with that actually was that because the action space was wider, or the area the car was in was wider, it actually made the job of the track boss much easier. The cars tended to stay on the track more, but they were still pretty fast. So still 7-second, 8-second lap was the fastest lap I think we saw at reInvent 2019. And again with the 2018 track, we were still seeing that 7 or 8 second lap. You know, the track is almost twice as long on 2019.
Now, I love that you talk about the work that the pit bosses go in. You talk about putting in your steps for the day. These track bosses even have special socks. I got to know more about the socks everyone is wearing, because that's really turned into a thing in DeepRacer competition.
We'll give you a full view here.
Yeah, it's something
in a second.
All right.
Something I did at reInvent 2019. I took my own socks because they were grippy. So I found that the carpet track, you could slide on it a little bit, and just to make it a bit easier to chase the car, especially when they were going at faster speeds, I use grippy socks like you get in trampoline parks. And now we have DeepRacer branded ones.
All right.
John, before you reset the timer, can we just check which is the valid laps on this?
Lap 4 does not count, I was told. Lap
What
5.
about lap 5? Because that seems a
No.
bit quick too.
No.
Are you-
What about lap 6?
Yeah, so I apologize. Lap 4, 5, and 6 do not count on there.
Okay, next one is 10. Oh, no, that one's 13, if
Yeah.
that one's
No,
good.
13.
Hold on one
The
second.
last
Let me
lap.
verify with my pit crew here. Give me 1
All
second
right.
while you guys do your thing.
Okay, so
Okay.
so the judges are not going to talk through the laps. Again, it's important that all these lap times come out accurate, and any lap that has a fault in it
Especially when
will
lunch
not
is
count.
riding on this.
Yeah, and again, with lunch
Yeah,
for
I
the
mean,
vice president, we are not going to leave this one to chance or guesses. So they are right now reviewing their notes and making sure that the best lap is the one that goes against Team Mercury. Again, Team Mercury made out of a pair of developers from Palo Alto and one from Bulgaria, Malini Pramad, both from Palo Alto, and Kalin from Bulgaria. Team
Okay,
Mercury.
so I can apologize there, Blaine. I did confirm it. The last lap that came in there, last 13 of 10.902, I believe is the very, it's allowed to finish, correct, David?
Okay.
You let the timer finish that lap,
Yep.
or does it? Okay, so that is correct. Lap 13 was 10.902. Lap 4, 5, and 6 did not count due to invalid.
Okay, so at 10.902, that is a great opening time. David.
Yeah, that's an impressive lap time, especially when you consider that in the virtual competition they set a time of 37.649, even allowing for the fact this is a slightly shortened track. It's not quite that much shorter than the one we use in 2018 normally. It's about, I think it's about 2 foot narrower, and there we go, I'm mixing between imperial and metric for measurements, but there we go.
All right. So that puts Team Mercury in a great place. They are in the clubhouse now with a good starting time. And now we're going to move to MadRaxer. MadRaxer, a team, Anna from Chicago, Palmieri from Bangalore, and Thomas from Springfield, Virginia. In this case, we're going to go ahead. Is the model loaded onto the car?
Model loaded, pit crew ready? We're ready.
All right. MadRaxer is on the track beginning in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and they're off. As John controls the amount of battery that the throttle gets, John likes to start with a conservative driving style at the beginning, allowing the car to feel its way around the track and slowly increases the throttle as it goes. Now, just because we've got a certain amount of throttle does not mean that the car will always go at max speed, because the percentage of speed is one of those things the car itself can control as part of the ML model. It can control steering right and left, and whether it's going full speed or half speed, because sometimes braking around the corner, not a bad idea. Are there some strategies when it comes to planning speed there, David?
One of the things you want to look at when you're doing your training, well, something I've found and I've also seen, is you need to control your action space. You don't want to have too many different steering angles, and again, maybe not so many different speed levels. So just because it multiplies up, so the more steering angles and the greater number of speed variables you have, it multiplies up, and it makes it a much more complicated model. So as I was talking about earlier, the computer on these isn't the most complicated.
David, I want to have you explain a little bit more about what you mean by action space. We've got some people that are probably watching this competition that are still new to the machine learning models. What do we mean when we talk about the action space of a model?
So the action space is the environment the model is seeing. So it's that. So it based on the inputs it gets within your reward function. The action space is what is that. I'm struggling for words here today. Is that environment, that snapshot? So
Okay.
There's an interesting time there. So based on that, if you end up going, say, right, we're going to have steering granularity of 3. So you've got 3 different sets of angles. So you have max left, middle, mid right, far right, and then you have 2 or 3 different speeds. that multiplies out. So for each of those steering angles, you can have 2 speeds. So you've got quick bit of maths, you've got 10. So if you go to a third one, you're adding into 15 different sets of variables between the speeds and the action space, between the speed and the steering. So you can get a exponentially more complex set of values to work with, which it can give you more variation in the model, but it can make it more complicated. And so, I have seen quite complicated models dropped onto these cars, and the car just sit there and not move.
So I'm going to pause you right there. We're seeing some good times coming through from MadRaxer. We just got a time of 10.275. Now that's provisionally going to put them in first place, assuming that the judges did not mark any faults on that round. So as we're nearing the end of their 3 minutes, it does look like MadRaxer will be taking the podium, the first spot. We only have a few seconds left. Actually, it looks like the time has ended. All right, so John's going to confer with the pit bosses to make sure which time qualifies. But provisionally, according to my chart, I've got them in the #1 spot.
Yeah, so it looks to be lap number 11 of 10.275, correct?
That's what I'm seeing. If there's no fault on that one, that's the lap I'm seeing.
Not at all. The no faults, no invalid, did not finish the last lap. Usually what we like to do is if you're there on the track and you're at like 5 seconds left, and we like you to finish that actual lap. But if you go off, I just stop it at that point because your time's not going to really increase there or decrease for you to make it in the first place.
All right. Anna Palmera Thomas of MadRaxer, you are right now sitting in first place, but don't hold your breath too hard because Team EDARacers is about to take the track. This team with Peter from Bulgaria and Karthik from India are all set. They've got a number of models they've submitted, but this is the one that they are going with. Has it been loaded onto the car? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, so I have team number 3 here loaded on the car. I'm just setting the speed. And pit crew ready? All right.
Here we go.
We're ready to go.
We're launching in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And Team EDARacers has a nice clean start off the track. And we're looking around. Good first, no faults. Looking good. So coming in at a time of 10.404 right out of the gate. And again, the way John likes to run these cars, he starts out at the beginning at a level and works his way up. So coming out with that fast, this could be very easily pushing MadRaxer off of the podium if they can stay on the track. Now, it seems the faster it's going, we keep getting these off tracks. Every off track is a reset, which at the speeds they're going, any reset pretty much is going to mean it's not a winning race.
Yeah, you need a clean lap to win the race, and we found that at the finals and the summits. As soon as you go off the track, that's it. That lap's over. Interestingly, part of that, we had some racers that were developing strategies then, that depending on where they went off the track, depending on how the car was reset, they were calling for a reset back to the start finishing line if it went off towards the end of the lap. But if it was still going off, went off towards the beginning of the lap, they would ask the car to get reset back to the track to get that flying start.
If it takes 20 seconds to get around the track and you've gone off track in the very first second, wasting time to push it all the way around, you're absolutely right. They would ask the pit boss, pick up the car, reset it, strike the lap, let's begin again. Now, this type of racing is just time trial racing. There are other types of racing that people are doing with DeepRacer. David, while we're watching Team EDARacers, what other types of races can people compete in?
Yeah, we've got the Evo cars now, there's actually just one just behind me. I'll grab it in a second. But that has stereo cameras on the top, on the front for depth, and it has a LiDAR on the top for surrounding view, which is quite cool. And we do head-to-head racing on that, and also object avoidance.
Well, let me just pause you there. So again, the difference between the Evo Racer and what's racing on the track right now, first of all, is number of cameras. The car that we're seeing right now, which by the way is making great time, it looks like we might even have a time of 9.84 seconds. That's provisional. We'll have to check that out. But that's a single camera car. There's no reason for stereo. But David, talk to me about the stereo vision.
Yep, so on the Evo, they've upgraded the car. So we've now got the two of the cameras at the top here. So we're getting depth perception. Same as with the human being with the two eyes. You know, if you cover one eye, you can't see quite so well in terms of the depth perception. You tend to miss things when you try to grab hold of them. Car is the same. With the two cameras, it overlays the 3D image, and it can see where the objects are. And then you get additional parameters that you use within the reward function for looking for objects and distance to objects and that sort of thing. And it sounds like we're just coming to the end of this run as well.
All right, let's check in with our pit crew and see how we did. So they're going to go ahead and review their results. Provisionally, once again, I see Team EDARacers as breaking the 10-second barrier. We're going to see if that holds up.
All right, so all of the lap times are valid. Of the best lap time that I have here, lap number 11 of 9.467. 9.467.
Excellent. Team EDARacers taking the podium. Each team getting progressively better. So Peter and Karthik are now sitting in first place with only 2 teams left to go for a chance to win lunch with Vice President Chris Wolf. Now, next up is the team DiedPool. Manish from Bangalore is the owner of the DiedPool team. We are going to go ahead and get this loaded onto the car and see how we do. Once again,
I'm just swapping out the battery real quick, giving a fresh battery since we've already ran our 3 racers.
You know, if you've never taken apart a DeepRacer car, it's interesting. There's 2 batteries inside the car. One of them is designed to simply drive the vehicle, and the other one is designed to drive the computer. So, and it's a computer. That's one of the funny things. This is a mobile Linux computer. You can actually plug in a keyboard and monitor onto this and just use it as your desktop if you wanted to. I actually did that as an experiment. It's the most mobile computer I've ever met. It's how we actually get the machine learning model to work.
Yeah, it's interesting. The battery for the computer will last about sort of 4 or 5 hours, and then the battery for the car, which is a small blue battery, like a little model car one, tends to run for about sort of 15 minutes of continuous laps. And again, depending on how fast the car is being raced, you know, we'll change the battery more often. And then for things like summits and reinvents, we'll change the battery every racer as we got to the top 10.
John, what are you holding there?
So I have the Evo that you guys were talking about here with the stereo cameras and the LiDAR on top. That is some of the physical changes that you'll notice when you come to the actual Evos doing head-to-head or object avoidance. Also, don't forget the nice strong bumper in the front.
Ah, yeah, because again, one of the cool things that we do with those races is we are putting actual boxes in the middle of the track. That's why the stereo camera that Dave was talking about is so important to know when you're about to run into something. And sometimes those cars, their model is not smart enough to not run into it. You will notice that John is wearing his Box of Doom shirt. In fact, let's be honest, we're all wearing our Box of Doom shirt. It was part of one of the great elements of reInvent's competition this year. On the track, there was a particular box that most models had no idea how to actually get through. Once again, for those of you who joined us, this is the Pluralsight competition in partnership with VMware. We are racing for a lunch with Vice President Chris Wolf. Right now, Team EDARacers is winning the competition at 9.467 seconds, but we've got 2 racers left on the track. Each racer has 3 minutes to compete, with the best single lap being their time. John, how we doing?
We are ready here. We're loaded up. Model number 2. Cars turned on. Pit crew ready? All right.
DiedPool is on the track. Manish, you are going to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I did press it. I did turn it on.
Folks, this is
Where I turned it on.
it's just after a battery swap. This happens sometime. We're going to go ahead and give the pit crew a few minutes to reset this. While they're doing that, talking again about things that Evo can do, we talk about object avoidance. Pit crew found the mistake.
Yeah, Blaine, do you want to talk about the lovely? It's actually a safety thing for the batteries, and basically it unlocks the battery. This little device, and the reason that you didn't hear the car actually go on is because you have to unlock the battery. Once they discharge and you recharge them back up, they don't work until you put in these lovely little devices. And once you plug it in, all you do is quickly plug it in, unplug, and now you
can hear
it. Look
it.
at that. Now it's working.
All right. So that is, you know what? That's one thing to add to the documentation here to make sure that you hear the beeps. If not, make sure the batteries have been unlocked. So I apologize, Blaine. If you want to get us started here, we're going to be ready to race real quick.
No problem. It's one of the things I love about physical world is we're dealing with physical problems. It's amazing that, you know, the things that go into racing. Here we go. DiedPool is getting back on the track. The clocks have all been reset. The pit bosses are excited to run around the track and get their steps in. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And now DiedPool is off to the races. Here we go. Unfortunately, gets an off track right away. We're going to see if this model is able to manage the rest of the track as we go. It's fighting the edge of the corner. Sometimes models are built for high speed, and when they go slow, might have trouble negotiating. So it's all based on how they've been trained. The track record holder for years, Sola from Japan, she had a model that in the initial speeds wasn't performing too well, but once she got up to a good speed, it just rolled around the track like butter. Always interesting to see how models perform and when they hit that sweet spot, which again goes down to training. Now, David, we were talking about different things with the Evo, and the one thing we talked about was object avoidance, and then there's head-to-head racing. And how does that play out?
Yeah, so there's two different styles. We've got your object avoidance, which we were talking about earlier, and we used quite a lot during the virtual reInvent in December. And there's also the head-to-head racing, which we actually used in the final. So with head-to-head racing, it's in a physical event, it's 2 cars on the track. If you saw the reIn final, it was all of the top 8 on the track, which would have been chaos if it had been on a physical track. So that would have been quite interesting to do, having a number of track bosses having to chase around a number of cars. I'm not sure how that would have worked out. So I think you had an advantage there in the virtual world. But it would have been like a version of It's a Knockout from the late 80s. Showing my age and my TV viewing habits there. But yeah, so the head-to-head racing, there's been a couple of things discussed, but it's going to be best of 3 or best of 5 races over either 1 lap or 3 lap when it comes to the summit. So that'll be quite interesting. And I did a trial with it this time last year, in fact, when we had our annual meetup in Chicago. We were trying different race formats then with the Evos, and John and I were both doing track boss on the 2019 track, where we tried doing the 3 laps, best of 3 over 3 laps and best of 3 over 1 lap. And it was quite interesting to see which one worked better. It kind of varies depending on the racer. It's the 3 lap one can be a bit of a drubbing sometimes, you know, if you've got one good model versus one that's not doing quite so well. So it was quite nice in some ways doing the 1 lap, you know, quick head run. But the problem with the 1 lap one is if there was a crash at the start or near the start, whichever car was cleared from the other car first tended to win that race.
Which definitely adds the human element of the pit bosses in. So they often become as much a part of the race in the physical world as anything else. In the virtual world, the resets happen automatically, all with the exact same time penalty. In a physical world, always interesting to watch. Speaking of interesting, we're seeing some times come in here that definitely are raising my eyebrows. The last lap to come through came in at 9.053, which provisionally puts it above, but I'm even seeing a time deeper in of 8.538. Now, I don't know if that's a good time or not, but in either case, I'm seeing a number of candidates that certainly could put DiedPool on the podium for now.
Yeah,
We have
guys,
reached.
I'm going to verify real quick on
Yep.
the time and everything. We did have an invalid lap. If you notice, it went off there. I said just leave it on. We'll mark it invalid
Yep.
as it comes across. So I want to verify the times
With the
for
pit
those.
bosses. Yep. Talk it out.
Yep.
Let's find out what's valid or not. But certainly some interesting times have now come through. It again, you go around the track as many times as you can in a 3-minute period. The best individual lap with no faults will be the time that gets posted for the team. And right now they're going through their notes, making sure that all the times that are there, which ones get disqualified.
Okay, so I just confirmed with the pit crew, when it went off that one time, it was not hit lap, so it went a really quick lap. But lap number 13 at 9.053 is valid. Lap number 13
Okay.
at 9.053.
So 9053 pushes DiedPool onto the podium with only one racer left to go, and that is VRacer Joy from Kolkata, India. Usually actually based out in Pune, but coming in here, only one shot. And if VRacer is not successful, then DiedPool will be the winner of the first place prize, lunch with Vice President Chris Wolf. All right, VRacer, we're going to load that up. John, are we ready?
Okay, we are loaded up here. Pit crew ready. All right, we're ready.
We got thumbs up. This is our final race of the day, and we are going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we're looks like we're going to be on a hold. All right. Okay.
Okay.
We'll go ahead and pause this. Figure out what's happening.
As always, I love live events. I didn't touch anything. We just stopped the car and turned it back on. So
that's all right. Again, it's the fun part of being part of a live competition. We've got a lot of great things that happen, and to me, part of the fun are these moments here. As we're waiting for this, I do want to point out the pit bosses that sit in the middle of the track, again trying to hug as close as they can to the post, primarily to stay out of view of the camera. But in some of these virtual tracks, there's all sorts of distractions that are there. I've seen virtual skyscrapers and bridges and lakes people have put in, all designed to make what's not the track be not interesting to the car. And that's an interesting part. When you talk about training this reinforcement model, the only thing you really want the car to evaluate is what's the right hash, what's the left hash, where's the center, and where should I be in the middle of it, depending on where the curve is. And anything else, it's really supposed to ignore. Now, we try to make it easy with the blue barriers and keeping the pit boss there in the middle. But getting the car to ignore everything but the track really requires some tricks as far as how the virtual track gets designed. Now, Dave, have you heard of any things that developers have done on their own to try to get them to ignore the green space?
Not so much in terms of the training and that sort of thing, but there was an update that went out just before reInvent where we added textured grass to our simulated environment. And a lot of people who were training outside of the console suddenly found that when they imported their models back into the console to submit them to the championship races, they weren't doing so well because their model wasn't identifying the difference between the textured grass and the edge of the track. So that was quite an interesting one, and it did cause a little bit of outrage, shall we say, within the DeepRacer community, that just ahead of the reInvent, there had been a slight subtle change to the environment within the simulator, and obviously the impact that then had. So, as you say, trying to keep the non-track area boring and quiet for the cars, so it's ignored is quite important, and it's why you see such the contrast of the colours on the track that John has there in the basement and at the events. Because the cars are seeing in grayscale, they need that contrast to be able to identify where the track is, where the edges are, where the center line is. That's why you have that, the off-field area is that kind of interesting color of green. You have the very white edges to the track, very black track, and then you have the yellow center line. And in fact, the track I had for my first event that I did in London, we we were unpacking the track, setting up for the event. We took the track out, we shook it down because it was a big roll, like a bit of carpet, rolled it out and looked at it and went, the center line's missing. That's interesting.
Ha!
And essentially the people that had printed the track had done a center line. It was like about, it was literally, I think it must have been about 1 pixel dots. We had like a very fine dotted line going around our track. And obviously that was going to be a problem for the cars. So invent and simplify being a leadership principle down to the nearest electrical store to get some electrician's tape. And we spent the next half an hour putting in a center line with some yellow electrician's tape, and it all worked fine in the end. But it was certainly one of those more interesting moments where you go, right, let's get ready to do the event, shake the track down and go, it's not going to
work. There is no middle line. And so many models depend on that middle line to know, am I where I want to be, especially in the straightaways? All right, well, it looks like we got a car that is responsive now.
Yeah, so get this. I have no clue. We stopped the car, we put it back on. I actually went back to the first car that I had running, loaded up the model, and it works. So I cannot explain what we're experiencing. All I know is I have backup cars for this type of thing.
I'm not even going to comment on that. We've got the cars on the track. This one's ready to go. This is our final racer of today. This is VRacer. Pit crew, are we ready? Got thumbs up. Ready to go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And VRacer is off and into the wall. And again, DiedPool had a shaky first lap, so that is not indicative of how the final will go. But 2 resets right off the beginning. By the way, if you get more than 3 resets, you automatically go back to the start line, and that is the 3rd reset. We can go ahead.
In the underground, we kind of just let them reset on a limited amount of time, only because the walls are right here, and it's very quick and easy to put back on.
That's fair.
No, I did slow it down.
Our rules. Just want to quickly go over what we're competing here for. So this is VRacer competing for a chance with lunch with one of the VPs of VMware, Chris, and also they'll get some AWS certification vouchers to go alongside that as well. So definitely worth pushing for that first place here.
Awesome, yeah. Certification vouchers, being able to prove that you've got the skills necessary to advance in your career. AWS certification. I actually work for the training and certification department here at AWS. Very proud of the industry certifications and what that means to the community. All right, we're still having a little bit of trouble as the car is going around, not having some good times at the beginning. The team of DiedPool right now, obviously nobody wishes ill on another team, but DiedPool will stand to win the competition if VRacer is not able to get consistent fast laps moving forward. Right now, the best time around sits at 20 seconds, not even close to a competitive lap.
Yeah.
Now, Blaine and David, can you
quick bit of maths? It's like a minute and a half so far.
Sorry, David. This is probably
no, just saying it's about a minute and a half into the run, but go for it.
On why a car does different in the virtual versus why it does different in the physical, because they did get first place there in the virtual environment, but it's always nice to know on how it translates to sim to real.
Yeah, when you talk about that sim to real translation, cars that work great in a virtual track statistically should work great in a physical world, but sometimes they just don't translate well. And Dave, what are some of the factors that could cause that translation to just not be what we expect?
I think the most common one I've seen is just the speed the car is being driven out on the track itself. So in the sim world, the car is set at a set speed based on the model. Obviously, in the physical world, John, in this case, is controlling the car as a percentage of battery power. So some models find they have a sweet spot at a higher percentage of battery power than others. So one of the things we often find is, and as John has explained at the start of the race, he will gradually increase the power over time to see if the car responds better with by going faster. Doesn't always work that way. It looks like we've got a pause here on the track.
Actually, we might have reached the end of time as I look at it.
Yes, so give me 1 second, just confirming all the time on that one. Also, Chimera Pit crew, thank you so much for your help. I really appreciate it. VMware Pluralsight, thanks for allowing my kids to be participants in these. They have a lot of fun, I really do. And it's homework time.
So we're going to say goodbye to the pit crew as they've got other work on their plates. In the meantime, as John reviews the time, any disqualified laps on there?
No, everything was good. The best lap time is number 3 here with 20.573. And the reason that I see some of this is because they train it for one particular track. And their track that they might have trained it on might have been the 2018 or the 2019 championship or the wide track. And they only put it for one specific type of track. And you have to realize you have to train it for different types of environments. Mine is narrow and a little shorter, so it could not get to the speed that it would I hope to get.
Well, with that then, Manish Kumar from Team DiedPool at 9.053 seconds is the winner for today's race and wins the lunch with Vice President Chris Wolf. And once again, we want to thank everyone for participating in this AWS DeepRacer Challenge. And remember, while the results of today's races are final, the influence and impact of AI ML in our lives and business is now just getting out of pit row. So please continue your AWS learning journey with Pluralsight at a link that we're going to post right here in the chat for y'all.
Yes, yes. Thank you. So let me round this out by saying thank you to all the participants in the race, in the virtual one and racing here on the physical environment. I hope you enjoyed it. We try to bring you the best here due to the current conditions. And this is what we're doing. We have other sites that we're going to be bringing to you called the London Loop that David runs in the next couple of months, hopefully to bring you from a full track and 2 different types. And we'd like to bring some Evo, so stay tuned for that. I have to thank David. David, thank you so much for always supporting and helping and co-founding this great experience for our viewers.
No problem. Great fun to be part of it, and gives your pit crew is as good as ever. Well done to those guys.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to keep them for a while. I must thank that, you know what, without them, I wouldn't be able to do this here in my basement. And I do run these events according to their school schedule because, like I said, they go to school. I can't run an event or I'd be doing everything myself, and it's just not possible. And Blaine, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us during this. We have a lot more in store for you in the future. Blaine will be joining these on a regular basis. And I know he enjoys bringing some DeepRacer commentating to you.
Always a pleasure to be here. Glad to be racing with y'all.
Yeah, so congratulations on the winners and enjoy your lunch. Feel free to include us. We'll have a virtual lunch if you'd like with that one as well. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. Blaine?
For that, I'm Blaine Sundred with AWS DeepRacer TV. Thank you for being here.
I'm John Meyer, your host, and we have track boss, Mr.
David Smith, thanks very much for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the race.
I think his audio is a little lag there on the communication to London, but what can we say? All right, thank you, everybody. Have a good time. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the race.